Okay, so first, a little bit of Pythagoras review. We've already seen this, okay? So I'm going to whip over this pretty quickly. You have this formula on your formula sheet. Which form is it in? This one, or this one? That one. This is all the same thing. If we're solving for a hypotenuse, you probably want to write it like that, right? And if you're solving for, these are called the legs, okay? This is always the hypotenuse. It's always opposite the right angle. It's always the longest side of the triangle, okay? But these are just called legs. If you're solving for one of these legs, you probably want to write it like that, right? Because you want this equals everything else. If it's the hypotenuse, you want the hypotenuse equals those two. Okay? This is the only one that's on your formula sheet, but all of these are, it's the same formula. It's just derived from this one, right? If I want to solve this one for a squared, what do? I subtract b squared to both sides, and then a squared is c squared minus b squared, and that's what that is. Okay? Just a little bit of algebra. So, calculate the length of the third side of the triangle. Well, the one we don't know. Okay? Which is the side we don't know here? Is it a leg or is it a hypotenuse? It's the hypotenuse. So I probably want it in this form. Okay? I want, what's c? It's x. So x squared is, doesn't matter what order these are in. I can go 2.5 squared plus 3.7 squared, or 3.7 squared plus 2.5 squared. Doesn't matter what order. Okay? So put that on your calculator. 3.7 squared plus 2.5 squared is 19.94. That's what the hypotenuse squared is. So how do I get x if I know x squared? Square root. You wascally wabbits, take the square root. Okay? What's the square root of 19.94? 4.5. Did I have units? Yes, I did. Okay? It's worth saying this just because we got a midterm coming up. Why does this work? Because, remember with exponents, the bottom part is the radical part. The exponent part is the top part. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and x to the 1, that's just x, right? You can look at it from the exponent point of view. Okay? So that's solving for a hypotenuse. This is a little trickier to see which one's the hypotenuse. I got to solve for, well, I'm given BC, I'm given AB, so I must want to solve for this one. Let's call it y. Is that a hypotenuse or a leg? It's a leg. Here's the side opposite the right angle. That's the hypotenuse, 122. So I probably want it in this form. Let y be a. So y squared is c is 122 squared minus the other leg, 120 squared. So right away, it's in the form I want. I don't have to mess around with adding or subtracting algebraically, right? Because I already did that first. Okay? So, again, y squared is, put that on your calculator. I got 484. And take the square root of it to give me y. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side. Square root of y squared is just y. Put that in your calculator and we get to the nearest tenth if necessary. I assume that's a 0.0 millimeters. Okay? That's the only two things you can do with Pythagoras. Either you solve for one of the legs or you solve for the hypotenuse. And keep this in mind when you're doing your trig, right? Just, we all get focused on trig, angle, angle, angle. we're going to be solving for these sides today. But remember, you can also use Pythagoras if you're given two of the sides. Okay? All right. Right angle triangle. That's the only kind we can do. I have an angle, and I have one of the sides. Just like yesterday, first thing you should do is label your triangle. This is the hypotenuse. Okay? For the angle that's given here, x is what? It's the opposite side. Okay? So this AB must be the adjacent. Okay? So, I'm given a hypotenuse. I need to determine the opposite. Let's use a different color. Okay? I have hypotenuse. I need opposite. That's your clue as to what ratio you're going to use. Let's write this again. So, TOA. Because the first couple of days is all, Mr. Watson, like, I don't get it. Which ratio do I use? Well, which ratio has hypotenuse and opposite? So does. There's opposite, there's hypotenuse. Okay? Tangent doesn't even have a hypotenuse, so that one's way out to lunch. Cosine, we need the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Okay? So the sine ratio is the one I want to use. So, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The sine of 52 is, what is the opposite? X. What is the hypotenuse? 14.2. That's how we write it out. Okay? And everyone wants to forget this equals here. Don't write sine 52 x divided by 14.2. This is the angle that's equal to this ratio. Okay? Remember, trig's just ratios. Don't forget the equal sign. Now, how do I solve this? It's telling us. You guys have heard of cross multiply? Cross product, same thing. You can think of this over 1 if you want. Okay? So we diagonally multiply 14.2 times sine 52 equals x times 1. But we don't have to multiply by the 1, so we just drop it. Okay, everybody okay with that? So that's what x is. It's 14.2 times sine of 52. Make sure your calculator's in degrees. Whoop. If you got a good one, I don't even have to put in multiply. My calculator knows that's what I mean. 14.2 sine 52 is, come on, 11.1897527 to 1 decimal place. What's that, Alicia? 11.2 centimeters. Remember, this is a distance. Okay? It's the length of x. That's what I'm solving for here, a side length of a triangle. Okay, I got units, it's 11.2 centimeters. And then you guys got to look. Does it look reasonable for this triangle? That's 14.2. If you got an answer like 17, you got to say to yourself, that doesn't make any sense. The hypotenuse has to be the longest side. How could that be 17? Okay? If that's about 14 and you got an answer like 0.014, you got to tell yourself that doesn't make any sense. I must have done something wrong. That doesn't look like the length that's proportionate to what I got here. Okay? All right, question 2. See any picture here? We gotta make one. Awesome. Who's played around on a ladder before? Good job. Was it unsafe or was it fun? Awesome. Common sense says ladders are fun, yes. We have a ladder. It's usually resting on something secure so we can climb up it and get to bigger and better places, right? It's usually on the ground. It's not hanging and floating in air. Do I want to make my ladder like that? What's going to happen? Yes. And then it's not fun anymore, right, kids? Do I want my ladder like this? That's even funner because you get to fall a farther distance. And maybe you even hear something go snap. Okay? Yeah, common sense. We got a ladder. Okay? I don't even need to read much more of this question. I can already draw my picture. It's probably going to go like that. If it's too steep, you're going to fall backwards. If it's too shallow, depending on the friction on the wall and the floor, it's going to collapse. It's probably going to look something like that. Okay? Let's read on. 4.5 meters. What is that? Is that the length of the wall? Yeah. Okay? This isn't math. This is common sense. This is literacy. Why are you guys reading every third block? Because some of us are having difficulty putting words into a problem. This is 4.5 meters long. By the way, it didn't even say draw a picture, did it? But should we? Yes, absolutely. Every time, draw a picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. It just reaches the top of a wall, okay? So like it just reaches the top of a wall. So I kind of drew it a bit too far. The angle between the ladder and the ground. Is that angle there? Is that the one I'm talking about? Okay, this is common sense. You know where the ground is? If you don't, look down. That's called the ground. Okay? The angle between the ground and the ladder. That's this guy right here. That's 65 degrees. Does it seem reasonable? Sure. Okay? If it's like 15 degrees, you know what's going to happen. If it's 89 degrees, almost vertical, you know what's going to happen, right? Okay. Looks reasonable. Make a rough sketch. Oh, now they're telling us to draw it. There's my rough sketch. Determine the distance between the bottom of the ladder and the bottom of the wall. Is that this distance? No. This is literacy. The bottom of the ladder is here. The bottom of the wall is there. That's what I want. By the way, you noticed I drew my wall perpendicular to the ground? That's usually how we like them, right? There's a word for that in carpentry. What is it called?
A straight wall.
Yeah, but before a straight wall, before we had levels, there was something called a plumb line. Okay? They have a string with a little weight on it, and because of gravity, it's always vertical. And they mark the top where the string is, and they mark the bottom where the little weight is, the rock probably. Okay? Those 2 points, I know if I put my 2x4 there, it's going to be vertical or plumb. That's the word they use, plumb. I don't know where it came from. Okay, but common sense, right? We know that's a right angle there. We know the wall is perpendicular with the ground. This isn't the Leaning Tower of Pisa, okay, where the ground settled a bit and the thing's crooked now. Okay, we got to have a right angle or we can't do this question, right? Okay, x. I want to find x. First thing you should do is label your triangle. The ladder is opposite the right angle. That's the hypotenuse. For the angle in question, the wall is the opposite. So what I'm trying to solve for here is the adjacent. What ratio do I want to use? So, ka, toa. What am I given? What am I trying to solve for? I want something with a hypotenuse, and I want something with an A. Which one has A and H? I want to use the cosine of 65 is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay? I need to solve that for x. That's the distance between the bottom of the ladder and the wall. Cross multiply is what I did just a minute ago. Okay, there it is. Algebraically, this is a better way of thinking, but it's exactly the same procedure. I want x by itself. I want to get rid of 4.5. I get rid of stuff by doing the opposite operation. It says x divided by 4.5. What's opposite of divide by 4.5? Multiply both sides by 4.5. 4.5 divided by itself is not 0, it's 1, but it's gone, because x times 1 is just x. Okay? That's exactly the same as cross multiplying. So x is, what's 4.5? Geez. 4.5 times, I'll put times in this time, cos 65. And if you guys got a dollar store special calculator, you're going to go 65 cosine equals times 4.5, right? Exactly backwards as to how it's written here. If you got a good calculator, it's how we read things from left to right. Okay, what is that? To the nearest tenth, it's 1.9. Do I have a unit? Yes, I do, meters. Okay? Hey, you got it right. All right? Okay. Same question. Determine the height of the wall. What do I want to know now? Okay, well remember the ladder just goes up the height of the wall. So now I want to know the opposite side. And I can do this two ways, because remember, don't forget about Pythagoras. Do I have two sides of this triangle now? Yes, I do. Okay, but first let's use trig. I want opposite. I'm given hypotenuse. Which one has O and H? Sine ratio. The sine of 65 is, let's just call it O, the height of the wall, over 4.5. Okay? How do I solve that thing for O? How do I get rid of 4.5? Multiply it. Both sides. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other side. Plug that in your calculator. And the opposite is 4.1 meters. That's the height of the wall, right? Okay. Could I have used this length 1.9 to determine that? Could I have used the tangent ratio? Sure I could. But why do I want to use this one instead of this one? Because I might have made a mistake. Maybe that's wrong. Always use what you're given in the question originally, okay? Because if this one's wrong and I put it in this calculation, now this one's wrong too, okay? But I know I got it right. Okay, can we do it with Pythagoras though? Sure, let's redraw a triangle. I know that's 4.5. I think this is 1.9, at least that's what I got. How do I find out the height? Is this a leg I'm trying to find, or is it the hypotenuse? It's a leg. So h squared is c squared minus the other leg squared. Okay, put that on your calculator. We should get 16.63. Don't round it, because we have to take the square root of it. So the height, if I take the square root of both sides, the square root, it looks like it's a little bit bigger than 4, doesn't it? Actually, it comes out to 4.1. Wow, what a coincidence, eh? I mean, I should get the same thing. I had better. And if you guys really want like 99% on your test, the next one we get, are we going to check it 2 different ways to see if we got the same thing? It's an idea. Okay. One little difference. Everything we've done so far, we have had a numerator to solve for. We could also have a denominator to solve for. It's just one more step with algebra. Here's my triangle. Okay, what ratio do I want to use here? I don't know yet. Label it. This is the hypotenuse. That's what I'm trying to find. For this angle, that's opposite, so this must be the adjacent. Which ratio has hypotenuse and adjacent? Ah, there it is. Cosine. The cosine of 64 is adjacent over hypotenuse. Ka. Okay? Everybody okay with that? But now I need to solve it for A. A is in the denominator. So I can't just multiply both sides by 7.9 and get it. I got a couple steps to do. Well, the book's kind of leading us through this. If we cross multiply A times cos 64 is equal to 7.9 times 1, if you like. Okay? Diagonally, that's what cross multiplying is. Everybody's okay with that? All right? But now we got another step to do. I want A by itself. How do I get rid of cos 64? It's A times cos 64. So if I divide it away, whatever you do to one side, do to the other side. Crosses out here, and this is what I get. Okay, so this one I have 2 steps. And what kind of a calculator do you have? A good one? Or a Cracker Jack special? So A is 18.0 to the nearest 10th. Okay? Does it look reasonable? Longer than this one, quite a bit longer. Has to be the longest side. It's the hypotenuse. Okay, that's what I got. I guess it's okay. All right. So here, if that was a little difficult with algebra, because sometimes it is, hopefully we can understand that, but if we don't, we can still get the right answer. I'll show you a little shortcut. Okay? Because you should know how to do that. We're in grade 10, but okay, if you can't, at least we can still get the mark by memorizing it. Let's make the math biology. Okay, this is what I have. Here's your little trick. If I just swap this and that, I get the same thing. Okay? So A goes up here. Swap. You can't read yellow too well, can you? Swap, switch. Okay, I'm going to trade these 2 guys. I'm going to trade this denominator with that thing. And then I have, what color do I have? Okay, This A goes up there, the cos 64 goes down there, okay? And I have the same thing, don't I? So if you just remember that, it's the same as doing 2 steps of algebra here. We should know how to do that, but you know, I would rather see kids get the mark at least and not understand the algebra, okay, than not get it at all. Okay? So that's your little trick. All right. Do we have a picture here? Okay. We get to draw one. We want the length of the hypotenuse of this triangle. How are you going to draw it? Well, start there. Start with your right angle. Now, it doesn't matter if I draw it like this, okay? Or I draw it like this, okay? Or I draw it like this. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. All right? But, you know, I can only show you one example here. That's PQR. I know that's 90 degrees. It's a right angle. What's my next bit of information? PRQ is 28. Okay, I know one of these angles is 28. So let's make this one kind of look like 28 degrees down here. Okay? So that's 28. That's 90. I don't have to write 90. I got a square there. You want to label this triangle. This is PRQ. Look at the middle letter. That's R. Okay? The middle one. This is PQR. So if that's R, the middle letter is the right angle. That's Q. So this must be P. Okay, let's check it. Follow it with your finger. PQR is 90. Is the middle one 90? Am I sandwiching 90 with my pen stroke? Yeah. Okay. PRQ is 28. Is that the middle one? Am I sandwiching it? Yes. Okay. And do that. Like move your finger, move your pencil along. Okay. What else do I know? PQ is 15.6. That's here. If I got the 2 pieces of information right the first time, then this I'm not going to have a problem with. And what am I trying to find? I'm trying to find the hypotenuse. Okay? So before you start bringing out your calculator, double check you got the correct triangle. Because if you drew it wrong, you're probably going to get the wrong answer. All right? What ratio do I want to use? What am I given for this angle? Label your triangle. I already got H. For this angle, that's the opposite. Okay? So I don't even care about the adjacent. Which ratio has O and H? Sine, yet again. Okay? So the sine of 28 is opposite over hypotenuse. Just like the last example, that's the denominator. How do I solve this thing for H? What's my little trick? Swap. Swap this and that. H is 15.6 over sine 28. Put that in your calculator. 33.2 to 1 decimal place. Do I have units? Millimeters. Okay? I'll just skip the last one. I'd rather give you guys more time to work on this thing. 1 to 5. 10 to 12. Quiz tomorrow. Finding a side length might be on there. Okay?